WWE superstars reportedly not happy after this Monday Night Raw. We're going to give you guys the details in this video, and as always, I'm going to put timestamps in the description down below. I want to kick things off with some Hangman Page. Adam Hangman Page from AEW is reportedly in talks for a new contract with AEW. So for those who are looking for your daily dose of AEW news, this seems to be very positive. According to Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful Select has reported that Adam Hangman Page and AEW are in the process of working towards potentially a new contract. Hangman Page was not only one of the original signings of the company, but he was one of the original people involved with announcing the formation of AEW, even though he wasn't given an EVP status within the company. And guys, this is a big win for AEW. I don't know if we should start questioning Hangman Page's loyalty, right? At this point, I think it's been very safe to say that he's always been done right by AEW, and he just fits within AEW very well. And I'm not saying it's a possibility that he won't go to WWE. Obviously, when your contract expires, it's always a good thing to take a look and see what other options there are. And I'm not in any way reporting that WWE is interested. I haven't seen any reports of anything like that. But just when you see the conversation online has become about Hangman Page staying with AEW potentially, I just think that's good news for AEW. I don't think there's anything wrong with AEW keeping Hangman Page. And quite honestly, Hangman Page is involved in a very massive storyline right now within AEW, which is a good thing. I think Hangman Page is definitely a top guy in this company. He should be a top guy for many years to come. So ultimately, this is good news for AEW. On the flip side of that, I am very curious, just as a wrestling fan, to see if maybe WWE would ever be interested in Hangman Page. I guess the idea of what would it look like, if Hangman Page was in WWE, how would WWE treat him? How would they book him? How would WWE view Hangman Page? And that's just, somebody who likes wrestling. You always kind of get this idea of like, okay, who can fit here? Who can fit there? Obviously, next year, a lot of contracts are coming up, so it wouldn't be a shocker whatsoever if WWE talent jumped over. It wouldn't be a shocker if Hangman Page jumped over or other AEW superstars. And the reason why it's not a shocker is just because all of these companies are doing something really good. But with that being said, I do think Hangman Page fits better in AEW. I think he should stay in AEW, and I'm excited to see what is next. We're going to turn our attention to WWE news. Stone Cold Steve Austin publicly talking about WrestleMania 39. He tells us why he didn't do a match at WrestleMania 39. He spoke to Sports Illustrated, and he admitted that WWE talked to him about working WrestleMania 39. However, they just couldn't make things happen. He says he hasn't spoken about this, but he's going to give everybody the story. I met with some people from WWE. We talked about the possibility of me wrestling at WrestleMania 39. The biggest thing in my mind was the presentation and what kind of match it was going to be. Going back to WrestleMania 38, the way the KO thing was presented, I love Kevin Owens. I turned that down 3, 4, or 5 times until the creative finally came to what it ended up being. I don't want it constructed as a real match per se. I needed something that could turn into one, and it did, but I think that's why we got away with it. The Dallas crowd was very receptive, and I hadn't been around, so the timing was right. He also goes on to say that he wanted to make sure that he could be in shape for another match, despite the fact that he was working out. It just didn't come together for him this time. He says to do a proper match, I'd have to be in off-the-charts shape. I told him, and this is the exact truth, I said, guys, I'm just fixing to go into production on this show. Stone Cold takes on America, and until we start production, I don't know what my life looks like. I can't commit. Sure enough, there were some technical issues before we finished. I was supposed to finish a month before we did. There's no way with the schedule I was doing, driving an RV all over God's creation, doing all I was doing, that I would be ready. I had 2 30-pound dumbbells, a 45-pound sandbag, and a 25-pound kettlebell. Working 15 hours a day, then getting into a 30 or 40-minute workout, that doesn't get you ready for WrestleMania. I was really protected at WrestleMania 38. This time, that wasn't going to be the case. That was a true statement. Until this show was over, I couldn't commit. Very interesting words when he says he was going to be protected for 38, because there were rumors that maybe it was going to be Brock Lesnar versus Stone Cold Steve Austin at WrestleMania 39. So we'll have to see. Maybe Stone Cold shows up at WrestleMania 40. I don't know, but it looks like he's finally speaking out about it, and it's a good update. With that being said, guys, I want to turn our attention to WWE adding a new Women's Championship belt to NXT. This is something I've spoken about quite a bit. Obviously, I believe that WWE should do it. But now on his Hall of Fame podcast, Booker T is speaking out, saying that it would be a good idea for WWE to add a secondary women's title as a singles championship in the NXT brand. He says, I don't see that being a bad thing just because right now they just have the tag team championship and the singles women's championship. The thing is, you have so many ladies in NXT right now that perhaps need that belt, that television championship to launch their career a little bit. He then goes on to praise several of the stars, including Sol Ruca and Tiffany Stratton. And guys, I agree 1000%. WWE adding a mid-card championship would be incredibly beneficial to the NXT brand. If you guys follow me on Twitter at AngoPW, I have spoken about this publicly so many times, but I genuinely believe that NXT's women's division is freaking really good. If you guys watch NXT every week, there's no bullshit here. You know what I mean? Whether you like or hate the wrestlers, that's up to you to decide, to have your own personal opinions. But when it comes to the actual booking of the women's division, the women are all over the show. They're constantly in matches. They're constantly in storylines. And that's just a very big deal for WWE NXT. You know, WWE's goal is to get these people propped up and ready for the main roster. And it's really important that they do that and give people television time. And you see it on NXT a lot more than Raw, SmackDown, or even AEW Dynamite and Rampage. So that's not something where I'm just giving you my opinion. I mean, literally, if you look at the show and the rundowns of everything, basically NXT's women's division is constantly on TV, whereas on Raw, SmackDown, and AEW, that's just not the case. But here's the thing. For as good as the women's division is on NXT, it is seriously lacking on the main roster, and now there's reports of WWE women being unhappy with WWE. According to PW Insider Elite, several backstage segments with female talents were cut shortly before Raw went on the air, and at least in one case when the material had already been filmed. What exactly the segments would have had entailed is unknown, but the plans being scrapped led to some very unhappy talents backstage. Fightful Select then also indicated a Damage Control's backstage segment didn't air during the show, so that may have been the material that was already filmed. However, this was not actually confirmed. Now, there had been tons of reports in recent weeks about WWE talent walking on eggshells, kind of being nervous, kind of being paranoid, obviously because of the Vince McMahon returning, obviously WWE merging with the UFC and whatnot. We've also seen Ronda Rousey express her own frustrations with WWE's creative for the women's division, and we've seen that being done publicly. So it appears that WWE talent are not happy here, and you know what? I just talked very highly about the NXT women's division, but we need to see that same type of focus being committed on Raw and SmackDown. And listen, SmackDown's a 2-hour show. You can definitely fit it within 2 hours, but at the very least, there is no excuses as to why you can't see more of a focus on the women's division on the 3-hour episode of Raw. Even WWE has improved in recent months. It doesn't really matter how great their booking is or how bad their booking is. The one thing that remains to be true is that the women's division continues to take a hit on daily television. Now, if you guys watched me on my roundtable show with JD, BC, and Jesse, you know, one of the biggest things I complained about was the fact that WWE, if you're not chasing the championship, the women's championship storylines don't really exist, right? Like, if you're fighting for the world title, that's cool. But if you're not doing that, you're not really doing anything of importance or relevancy. Now, we have seen in recent weeks that the women's tag team championship belts are actually being defended. We're seeing women's tag titles and number one contendership matches being taken place, which is a very big step up for the women's tag team scene. However, when it comes to just random, you know, single feuds or whatever it may be, you're not really seeing anything of that in WWE television unless it's for the title. And I think that's a big miss for the company. That's something that definitely needs to improve, and hopefully it does improve by the time the draft comes around. But going back to the NXT thing, there's a huge solution. Obviously, adding a mid-card championship to NXT could be a big win. What about for WWE's Raw and SmackDown? Is it too many titles? It might be, but you have a very big women's roster, and you just got to do more with it. That's really what it comes down to. Whether it's a new title, whether it's not, it doesn't really matter. You got to create stories. You got to get more of them on TV, and you cannot be cutting out segments or things like that so often. So I could definitely understand why these reports could be accurate, right? Obviously, there's no 100% confirmation that this is entirely true, but I can understand why people would not be happy. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below.